What happens when your own family tries to take away the one friend you love most? Mabel refused to give up her dog, and found herself at the heart of a viral movement. What happened next brought a whole town together. For over 10 years, Mabel's world revolved around her loyal companion, a scruffy rescue terrier named Biscuit. Since her husband's passing, Biscuit had been her shadow, her comfort during lonely evenings, her walking partner on crisp mornings, her excuse to chat with neighbors at the park. In her small town, everyone knew the pair. Mabel with her wild silver hair tucked under a faded sun hat, Biscuit prancing at her side in his red tartan coat. Mabel's daughter Cheryl called often, but mostly to nag. "Mom, you're getting older. What if you trip over that dog? You should let someone younger handle him." Her son-in-law Frank was even blunter. "That dog's a menace. Chewed up my best slippers last Christmas. You're not as spry as you used to be, Ma." Even her grandson Sam, usually sweet, echoed the refrain. "Grandma, you don't walk as fast anymore. Biscuit needs a real run." But Mabel brushed them off. "I'm fine, thank you. Biscuit and I know our limits." She doted on Biscuit, baking him sweet potato treats and arranging playdates with a neighbor's spaniel, Rosie. On Sunday afternoons, she posted pictures of Biscuit on a community Facebook page, sometimes in costumes, sometimes muddy from the park, always grinning and bright-eyed. It was these posts that first caught the wider world's attention. One rainy week, Mabel dressed Biscuit in a child's yellow raincoat and shared a photo with the caption, "Biscuit says, bring on the puddles." The image took off, shared hundreds of times by strangers who dubbed him the happiest dog on the internet. Biscuit's followers ballooned overnight. Soon, people all over the county recognized Mabel and her four-legged star. This new fame did not amuse Cheryl and Frank. When Cheryl came to visit, she tooted at the stacks of dog biscuits and the mountain of fan mail on the kitchen table. "Mother, this is ridiculous. You don't need this chaos. I could take Biscuit. Sam would love to have him, and you could finally relax." Frank backed her up, reminding Mabel that she was getting forgetful, and Biscuit deserves a younger owner. Mabel tried to laugh it off, but her hands trembled as she petted Biscuit's wiry head. That evening, she called her best friend Irene in tears. "They want to take him away, Irene. Like I'm too old for joy." Irene, sharp as ever, snapped back, "They can't just take your dog. Fight back, Mabel. You've got more fire in you than the lot of them combined." Determined to prove herself, Mabel doubled down on her daily walks. Rain or shine, she and Biscuit marched through town, waving at old friends and new admirers alike. Children begged for photos, teenagers asked for selfies, and the local news even ran a story about Biscuit, the town's little ray of sunshine. But the family's pressure only increased. Cheryl began visiting unannounced, hovering as Mabel navigated the stairs, pointing out every minor stumble or misplaced step. Frank tried to lock Biscuit in the backyard during visits, muttering about safety. One Saturday, Mabel returned from her walk to find Cheryl in the kitchen, holding Biscuit's leash and quietly filling out paperwork on her phone. "Just looking into a few adoption options, Mother. It's for your own good." That was the breaking point. Mabel snatched the leash from Cheryl, her voice shaking with fury. "You have no right. Biscuit is mine. He's family, not furniture." Cheryl, stung, stormed out, vowing to do what's necessary for everyone's safety. Word of the argument spread. Neighbors rallied around Mabel, dropping off cards and flowers, even starting a petition titled, "Keep Biscuit Home." Mabel's Facebook page exploded with support, photos pouring in of people and pets holding handmade signs. #Biscuit belongs with Mabel. One evening, a letter arrived from a national animal charity, inviting Mabel and Biscuit to speak at a virtual event about senior dog owners and companionship. Mabel was shocked, but Irene was delighted. "You're famous now, love. Show them what you're made of." As Mabel watched Biscuit doze on her lap, she realized she was no longer alone in her fight. She had friends, fans, and a stubborn terrier who believed in her, no matter what her family said. After the virtual event with the National Animal Charity, Mabel's phone rang off the hook for days. Reporters wanted interviews. Animal lovers from across the country flooded her inbox with support, advice, and photos of their own rescue pets. The video of her and Biscuit, Mabel in her polka-dot scarf, Biscuit perched on her lap, both beaming into the webcam, was clipped and reshared by dozens of local news outlets. Overnight, Mabel became something of a folk hero, the feisty grandmother who wouldn't give up her dog. But for Cheryl, the sudden spotlight only hardened her resolve. She called Mabel one morning, her tone sharp and businesslike. "Mother, you're making a spectacle of yourself. This isn't healthy. It's embarrassing for the family. Let us take Biscuit, just for a little while, until things calm down." Mabel refused, more firmly than ever. "Biscuit stays with me. He's not a burden, Cheryl. He's my joy." Frank, frustrated by Mabel's new fame, tried a different tactic. He left brochures for senior living communities with pet-friendly options on Mabel's table, circled certain phrases in red, on-site dog parks, and staff available for daily walks. But Mabel saw through it. "I'd rather sleep in a tent with Biscuit than give him up for a fancy dog run I don't want," she told Irene, tossing the brochures straight in the recycling. With the tension mounting, Cheryl and Frank began involving other relatives. Mabel's niece called from out of state, her voice hesitant. "Aunt Mabel, maybe it would be better if someone else took Biscuit. Just for a bit. Everyone's talking." Mabel responded with gentle firmness, "Thank you for caring, dear, but Biscuit's not going anywhere." Feeling besieged in her own home, Mabel started locking her doors during the day. She stuck a handwritten sign on her gate, "Private property. No Biscuit business beyond this point." Irene, ever loyal, printed matching signs and posted them around the neighborhood. The message was clear: Mabel was drawing her own boundaries. But her family's pressure spilled over into the public. Cheryl began posting long, emotional notes on Facebook about her concern for mother safety and the difficult decisions families must make for aging parents. The comment section lit up. Half the town seemed to be arguing about Mabel's right to keep her dog. Supporters started a Biscuit Watch group to walk with Mabel and Biscuit on their daily outings, making sure she never felt alone or intimidated. One day at the park, a local high schooler asked if she could film Mabel and Biscuit for a student documentary about friendship and community. Mabel agreed, and soon her story was circulating in even more circles, winning the hearts of strangers. Biscuit's joyful antics became a running gag on local TikTok, with teens mimicking his trademark victory spin when given a treat. But behind the fun, the pressure grew. Cheryl consulted a lawyer, making vague threats about guardianship and unfit living conditions. Mabel, terrified of losing Biscuit, scheduled an appointment with her doctor, who, after a thorough checkup, wrote a glowing note: "Mabel is in fine health for her age. Biscuit's presence contributes positively to her well-being." Armed with the letter, Mabel posted it on her front door, right beside the "No Biscuit Business" sign. She took a photo, uploaded it to Biscuit's Facebook page, and watched as hundreds of supporters cheered her on. The next morning, an envelope appeared in Mabel's mailbox, a petition signed by over 200 neighbors and townsfolk, declaring their support for her and Biscuit. Some left handwritten notes: "You're our inspiration, Mabel. Don't give up, we're with you." Even the mayor sent a message of encouragement. As Mabel read through the signatures, tears welled in her eyes, not from fear or sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of community that now surrounded her. She hugged Biscuit close. "Looks like it's just you and me, kid," she whispered, a fierce joy burning in her chest. By the following week, Mabel's world had transformed into a whirlwind of support and daily drama. She could hardly leave her house without being greeted by a neighbor offering dog treats or a friendly wave. Biscuit, now something of a celebrity, strutted along the sidewalks, his tartan coat freshly laundered and his tail held high. Children rushed up for selfies, and a local bakery even created Biscuit Biscuits, dog treats shaped like tiny bones, stamped with his name. But the pressure from Cheryl and Frank escalated. They began showing up at all hours, sometimes bringing Sam to plead on their behalf. Sam, awkward but earnest, tried to convince his grandmother with childhood memories. "You always said Biscuit would be my dog one day, Grandma." Mabel smiled sadly, ruffling his hair. "One day isn't today, sweetheart. Biscuit's not ready to retire." Irene, sensing Mabel's exhaustion, took it upon herself to organize a rotating Biscuit Watch schedule, so Mabel always had a friend by her side on walks or when running errands. Retirees, teenagers, and fellow dog owners signed up eagerly, transforming simple strolls into parades of solidarity. The group grew so large that the local paper ran a photo of the Biscuit Brigade, lined up outside the park in matching red scarves. Cheryl, infuriated by the community's involvement, demanded a family meeting at Mabel's house. She arrived with Frank and Sam in tow, bringing a folder bulging with medical pamphlets and online printouts. "Mother, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone's safety. Dogs can be unpredictable." Mabel listened patiently, arms folded, Biscuit at her feet. When Cheryl finished, Mabel calmly slid the doctor's letter across the table. "My health is fine. Biscuit is my lifeline, not a liability." The standoff grew tense, voices rising. Frank threatened legal action, waving his phone and muttering about evidence and documented concerns. Mabel's hands shook with frustration, but she didn't back down. "You can call every lawyer in town. I'm not giving up my dog." The confrontation ended with Cheryl slamming the door, and Sam looking back with regret before following his parents out. As word of the family drama spread, the community doubled down on their support. Neighbors began checking in on Mabel daily, dropping off groceries, offering to walk Biscuit when it rained, and even forming a Biscuit's Friends online group to share stories and organize events. Mabel's mailbox overflowed with cards, small gifts for Biscuit, and even sketches drawn by local children. One day, a local journalist dropped by to interview Mabel for a human interest feature. Cameras captured her walking Biscuit through the park, surrounded by her Biscuit Watch team, laughing and waving at the crowd. That night, the story aired on regional TV, Mabel's gentle strength and Biscuit's infectious joy lighting up the screens of thousands of homes. The next morning, Mabel awoke to hundreds of new messages and friend requests. Biscuit's social media page trended with the hashtag Let Mabel Keep Biscuit. Influencers and dog lovers from across the country joined in, sharing their own stories of senior pets and loyal companions. Amid all the attention, Mabel's world felt both larger and more intimate. She found herself surrounded by new friends, connected to people she'd never met. The pain from her family's rejection still lingered, but it was softened by the fierce loyalty of those who now saw her not as a burden, but as an inspiration. One evening, as she sipped tea with Irene and stroked Biscuit's back, Mabel whispered, "I never thought standing up for one small dog could bring so many people together." Irene smiled, patting her hand. "It's not just about the dog, Mabel. It's about you. You reminded everyone that love is worth fighting for." As dusk settled, Mabel looked down at Biscuit, who gazed back with trusting eyes. She felt the weight of her loneliness slip away, replaced by a warmth as deep as family, maybe even deeper. The days that followed the TV broadcast were a blur of excitement and unexpected opportunities. Mabel was invited to appear on a morning radio show, where she spoke about her life with Biscuit, the power of community, and the right of older adults to keep the companions they love. Callers flooded the station with praise, some sharing their own stories of family misunderstandings and beloved pets. The segment went viral. Soon, messages poured in from all over the country. Strangers offering encouragement, artists sending portraits of Biscuit, and a dog rescue in California asking for Mabel's advice on senior pet adoption. Biscuit, for his part, enjoyed every moment. Walks became public events. The local pet shop gave him a lifetime supply of treats, and a children's author asked permission to use him as the hero in a picture book. Mabel joked to Irene, "He's the town's mayor now, I'm just his campaign manager." Laughter filled her house again, a sound she'd missed. But not everyone was pleased with Mabel's newfound celebrity. Cheryl, now feeling increasingly isolated from both her mother and the community, grew angrier. She posted defensive comments online, painting herself as the concerned daughter, simply trying to do what's best. Supporters of Mabel countered with stories of her independence and vitality. The local news ran a follow-up segment, inviting both sides to share their perspectives. Cheryl declined, but Frank sent an email to the station, warning of dangerous precedents and families being undermined by meddling outsiders. At the same time, Sam found himself caught in the middle. His friends teased him about Grandma the Dog Lady, but he secretly watched Biscuit's viral videos and defended Mabel to classmates. One afternoon, he slipped over to Mabel's house with a batch of cookies. "I just wanted to see Biscuit," he said shyly, scratching the dog behind the ears. Mabel hugged him, relieved to see her grandson smile. For the first time in months, the kitchen felt like home. Mabel's life grew richer with each passing day. She and Irene started volunteering at the animal shelter, organizing a Senior Paws event to match older dogs with older adopters. Local businesses donated prizes. Biscuit was the star of the show, inspiring a record number of adoptions. Photos from the event were shared on social media, and Mabel was asked to write a column for the local paper about pets and aging with dignity. Yet beneath the surface, the strain on Mabel's family remained. Cheryl's resentment simmered, and she became more insistent in her attempts to prove Mabel unfit. She began documenting every minor stumble or misplaced key, collecting supposed evidence for a case that grew weaker in the court of public opinion by the day. Meanwhile, Mabel's circle of support continued to expand. The town council invited her to consult on pet-friendly senior programs. A local school asked her to speak about kindness and advocacy. Mabel accepted every invitation with gratitude, knowing each opportunity brought her closer to others and further from the loneliness she'd once known. One evening, after a lively community potluck where Biscuit was guest of honor, Mabel sat quietly with Irene and Sam, watching the dog snooze at her feet. Sam turned to her, serious for his age. "Grandma, I'm sorry for what Mom and Dad said. I think Biscuit's lucky to have you." Mabel hugged him close. "We're lucky to have each other, Sam. That's what matters." Outside, spring's first flowers poked through the ground, and Mabel felt a stirring of hope. The world had changed since her family tried to take Biscuit, but what she'd gained was greater than she'd ever imagined. As spring fully bloomed, Mabel's home became a gathering place for more than just the Biscuit Brigade. The town's children brought drawings of Biscuit to hang on her refrigerator, and volunteers dropped by to chat or offer help around the house. Irene, sensing the need for even more organization, helped Mabel host a weekly Tea and Tales social in her backyard. Tea for the people, treats for the dogs, and stories for all. Biscuit basked in the attention, performing his victory spin on command and rolling over to the delight of the neighborhood's youngest visitors. A local artist started a mural of Biscuit and Mabel on the wall of the community center. The unveiling turned into a block party, music, lemonade, and laughter echoing down the street. Mabel gave a short, heartfelt speech about kindness, independence, and the importance of fighting for the things and beings we love. Meanwhile, Cheryl's efforts grew more desperate and visible. She contacted animal welfare agencies, each of which visited Mabel, only to leave satisfied that Biscuit was healthy, happy, and in no danger. Mabel greeted each official with poise, offering tea and proudly showing off Biscuit's toys, certificates from the vet, and the ever-growing stack of supportive letters. Frank grew weary of the ongoing battle. He stopped coming to confront Mabel, choosing instead to distance himself from the conflict. But Cheryl refused to let go. She ramped up her campaign online, posting dramatic stories that increasingly rang hollow. Her posts were met with gentle but firm pushback from people who had met Mabel, seen her energy, and witnessed her bond with Biscuit firsthand. Sam found himself increasingly at odds with his parents. He spent more time at Mabel's house, volunteering with Irene at the animal shelter and filming short videos for Biscuit's followers. He captured Mabel teaching Biscuit to high-five, and the clip went viral, earning them a short feature on a national morning show. Messages poured in from around the world, people of all ages writing to say that Mabel and Biscuit inspired them to keep fighting for joy and connection. The community's support was unwavering. A local bakery started a fundraiser to help pay for senior pet adoptions, and Mabel was honored as Citizen of the Year at the annual town fair. The mayor presented her with a plaque, and Biscuit was given a tiny medal and a basket of treats nearly as big as he was. One afternoon, as Mabel sat on her porch with Irene, Sam, and Biscuit, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. "All this," she said, waving at the joyful chaos in her yard, "started because I refused to give up what made me happy." Irene grinned, passing her a cup of tea. "You reminded everyone, Mabel, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply say no." Cheryl, meanwhile, found herself increasingly isolated. Her accusations lost traction as Mabel's story became one of hope and unity. Yet Mabel, despite everything, left the door open. She sent invitations to Cheryl and Frank for every event, never closing her heart, even as she guarded her home. As summer approached, the town was already planning its next Biscuit Parade. Mabel and Biscuit were asked to lead, riding in a classic convertible festooned with banners and flowers. The event promised to be the highlight of the season. That night, Mabel sat by the window, Biscuit curled up beside her. She thought of the battles fought, the friendships forged, and the community she'd helped knit together from a moment of crisis. She knew the journey wasn't over, but she faced each new day with a confidence she'd never felt before. Mabel scratched Biscuit's ears, smiling as he wagged his tail. "We did it, old boy. We really did." The day of the Biscuit Parade dawned bright and breezy. Mabel woke up early, her nerves fluttering with excitement. She gave Biscuit an extra bath, brushed his coat until it gleamed, and tied a fresh red bow around his neck. Sam arrived to help, followed by Irene carrying a box of parade supplies, banners, streamers, and homemade dog treats. All morning, well-wishers dropped by with flowers and cards, eager to catch a glimpse of the soon-to-be stars. As the convertible arrived, festooned with ribbons and a hand-painted sign that read, "Long live Biscuit and Mabel," a crowd gathered along Main Street. Children waved signs, teenagers snapped photos, and older neighbors clapped, many misty-eyed. The mayor led the way, followed by marching bands, rescue dogs in costume, and floats from every corner of the community. Biscuit sat proudly on Mabel's lap, greeting everyone with his signature tail wag and victory spin. Local reporters filmed the festivities, and national news outlets picked up the story. A small town comes together to celebrate loyalty, love, and the right to grow old with dignity, one reporter announced as Mabel waved from her car, Irene beaming beside her. The sense of unity was overwhelming. Even those who'd never met Mabel cheered her on, inspired by her quiet strength and the devotion she shared with her dog. Cheryl watched the parade from a distance, torn between pride and bitterness. Frank stood quietly at her side, a soft look of regret in his eyes. After the last float rolled past, Sam slipped away from the crowd to join his mother. "Come see Grandma," he urged. "Just for a few minutes." Cheryl hesitated, but eventually let herself be led down Main Street. Mabel, still surrounded by supporters, was stunned to see Cheryl and Frank approach. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, to everyone's surprise, Cheryl hugged her mother tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was scared. I thought I was protecting you, but you were protecting yourself all along." Mabel held her close, her own eyes wet. "We both want what's best, love. I never wanted to shut you out." Frank shook Mabel's hand, apologizing quietly. "We let our worry blind us. But you showed us how strong you are." Sam grinned, hugging all three, while Biscuit spun circles at their feet, barking with delight. The moment was captured on camera. A family, reunited, surrounded by a town that had become their extended family. The photo went viral, flooding social media with messages of hope and healing. That afternoon, the parade turned into an impromptu street festival. Neighbors brought food, musicians played on street corners, and Biscuit posed for endless photos. Mabel and Cheryl sat together on the steps of the community center, sharing stories and laughter for the first time in years. As evening fell and the last guests trickled away, Mabel walked home with Irene, Biscuit, and her family. For the first time, she felt at peace with the past and excited for the future. The loneliness that once shadowed her life had been replaced by love, won not by surrender, but by gentle, persistent courage. At home, as Mabel tucked Biscuit into his bed, she whispered, "Thank you, boy. You gave me the world." Biscuit looked up, tail wagging, as if he understood every word. The weeks after the parade brought a gentle, golden calm to Mabel's life. Every day, she and Biscuit were greeted by waves and cheerful calls as they walked through the market, past the library, and down the leafy lanes where their story had first begun. Strangers who recognized her from the news stopped to thank her, sharing their own tales of pets and second chances. Even the grocer kept a special bag of treats under the counter for Biscuit, and children sometimes left notes on Mabel's doorstep, drawings of her and her famous dog, scrawled with messages like, "Thank you for showing us how to be brave." Mabel's weekly Tea and Tales gatherings grew even larger, now hosted at the community center to accommodate the steady stream of visitors. Dog owners traveled from neighboring towns, eager to meet the pair whose story had touched so many. Local musicians volunteered to play, bakers donated cakes and cookies, and even the mayor stopped by, laughing with Mabel over the Biscuit Medal of Honor she'd received at the parade. Cheryl, changed by her mother's strength and the community's kindness, began to visit regularly, sometimes with Frank, often with Sam. She no longer came to criticize or persuade, but to help, to listen, and, most importantly, to simply enjoy time together. She offered to help with the Tea and Tales events, making scones and chatting with other guests. Cheryl even started walking Biscuit on quiet afternoons, her laughter mingling with Mabel's as they watched the little dog race through the grass. Mabel's home became a hub of happiness. Neighbors dropped in for advice, for stories, or just a cup of tea. Sam created a scrapbook of Biscuit's adventures, filling it with newspaper clippings, fan letters, and photos from the parade. When the school asked him to give a presentation on Someone Who Inspires You, he chose Mabel, speaking about her courage and how she'd stood up for what she loved, no matter what. Meanwhile, Biscuit continued to live his best life, enjoying endless treats and attention. His social media following climbed past 100,000, and people sent postcards from all over the world. A popular pet food company offered to feature him in an ad campaign, with all proceeds going to local animal rescues. Mabel accepted, proud to give back to the shelter where she'd first found her beloved friend. One sunny afternoon, as Mabel sat on her porch with Cheryl and Irene, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Cheryl squeezed her hand. "You showed me what real love looks like, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." Mabel smiled, her heart light. "We all learn at our own pace, sweetheart. I'm just glad you're here now." That evening, as dusk settled, Mabel reflected on all that had changed. She thought of the fear, the loneliness, the moments she'd doubted herself, and then the tidal wave of kindness, the laughter, the joy that had swept it all away. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but she also knew, for the first time in a long while, that she would never face them alone. As Biscuit curled up beside her, Mabel whispered, "You and me, Biscuit. We're unstoppable." Summer deepened, bathing the little town in sunlight and the hum of cicadas. Mabel's life had become a tapestry of warmth, laughter at tea and tales, long walks with Cheryl and Sam, and endless afternoons in her flower-filled backyard with Biscuit by her side. She no longer worried about being watched or judged. Instead, she opened her door to anyone in need of a kind word, a slice of cake, or simply the company of her famous little dog. Biscuit's popularity kept growing, but Mabel never lost sight of what mattered most. She continued volunteering at the animal shelter with Irene, now helping to run workshops on the healing power of pets. The Senior Paws initiative expanded to other towns, and Mabel received invitations to speak at events and inspire others. Her mailbox brimmed with letters from people whose lives had been touched by her story, and every time she replied, she thanked them for reminding her that hope could spark from the smallest acts of courage. The parade became an annual tradition, with Mabel and Biscuit always leading the way. Families who once didn't know each other now met regularly at the community center, and friendships blossomed around their shared affection for animals and storytelling. Mabel's living room filled with thank you cards, gifts from grateful neighbors, and more photos than she could count. One evening, the whole family gathered in Mabel's backyard for a summer feast. Frank grilled vegetables, Sam set up a slideshow of Biscuit's funniest moments, and Cheryl surprised her mother with a framed collage of Biscuit's greatest hits, newspaper headlines, parade photos, and the first viral raincoat picture that started it all. As the sun set, they laughed and remembered all that had happened, marveling at how far they had come. After the last guest had left, Mabel sat on her porch, Biscuit's head resting in her lap. Fireflies blinked in the darkness, and the air was sweet with the scent of jasmine. Mabel closed her eyes, feeling the peace she'd fought so hard to win. The journey had been long, but her heart was full. She scribbled in her journal, "I stood my ground for the love of one small dog. The world showed me I was never alone. In fighting for Biscuit, I found myself, and together, we showed everyone that it's never too late for new beginnings." As the night grew quiet, Biscuit gave a sleepy sigh and nestled closer. Mabel smiled. Whatever tomorrow might bring, she knew she, and Biscuit, would meet it with courage, surrounded by friends, family, and a community forever changed by the simple power of love.